Hi everyone, my name is Liz I Read, and welcome to another video, and today I am recommending YA fantasies. So YA fantasies is probably one of my favorite genres. I've read quite a bit of them, and so I thought I'd recommend some to you. Some of these you probably have heard of before, but hopefully you can find some recommendations in here that you've never heard of, so let's just get into the video. So the first one I'm going to recommend is Broken Wish by Julie C. Dow. This is more of a fairy tale. It's not a retelling, but it reads like a fairy tale, and it's the first in a series. Each installment's written by a different author, which is kind of interesting. But this one, it's broken up into two sections. The first part of the story, we follow a couple who've just moved into town, and they don't really know anyone. And so the wife, she starts corresponding with the witch in the forest, and they just write letters back and forth, and sometimes they give each other gifts, but it's kind of frowned upon because witches are considered evil in this town, and so it's kind of hush hush. But she develops a relationship with this witch, and they eventually do meet and get to know each other really well. One day, because of her friendship, the witch offers to help the couple because they can't have children, and so she's offered to use magic to help them have children. And the wife agrees, but then when she actually becomes pregnant, the husband tells her to cut off ties because they don't want to have a reputation sympathizing with the witch. Flash forward many years later, once they actually have a family and some of their kids are grown up, we follow Elva, and she is their daughter, and she has some magical abilities, but she's been taught by her parents to hide it because the people of this town would look down upon her. And so she's been hiding her abilities, but one day it just comes to the point where she needs to learn more about it, and she does actually reach out to this witch. And one thing I love about the series is you don't quite know if you can trust the witch. That's definitely how I felt throughout this entire story, because there are rumors that children are missing in the forest, and this is a tragic story. I just want to let you know that going in, because it just really ends really surprisingly. I really loved it. It was an interesting story. I don't want to say there's a romance in here, but there are romantic themes, and I like the interesting fact that it was kind of broken into two different stories. We get kind of like the husband and wife, and then we get to know their children a little bit. There are curses in here. There's magic mirrors. There's lots going on. So if you want a good fairy tale story, I definitely recommend. The next one is a bit cliche, but I'm going to recommend Throne of Glass by Sarah J. Maas. I'm sure everyone has heard of it, but if you have not, this is a long, epic fantasy YA story. In book one, we follow Selena. She is an assassin, but she's imprisoned, and Prince Dorian, he lets her out in order for her to become his champion. There's a competition with other people, other champions, to compete against each other, and the winner becomes the king's champion to work for the king. And so she agrees to do it because if she wins, if she becomes the king's champion, then after several years she would become free, and that's all she wants. She wants to be free. So this is her story mostly, and it's a lot of fun. I really enjoyed book one. The story goes into several directions throughout many books later. So if you like an epic fantasy, if you like assassins, if you like strong female characters, if you like romance, definitely recommend. The next fantasy I have to recommend is Heartless by Marissa Meyer. It is a Queen of Hearts origin story. It's set in Wonderland. We follow Catherine, and she just wants to be a baker, and she loves baking. She wants to open a bakery with her maid, but they're more like friends. So they've been dreaming about opening a bakery for a really long time. Unfortunately, the king has his sights on her and wants to marry her, but that's not what she wants. She wants to open her own bakery and have a life of her own choosing, but she doesn't know how to tell her parents this. And then in walks Jest, who is like the court jester. They strike up a relationship, and they kind of court for a little bit. And so it's kind of their romance a little bit. But like I said, this is the Queen of Hearts origin story. So this is a tragic story because it ends with her becoming queen. I remember not knowing that when I read this, and was really shocked, but it was a really good story. I do recommend it. It's really, really well written. And so if you like Marissa Meyer's books, like Cinder, the Cinder series, or the Renegade series, try this book out as well. The next series I'm going to recommend is the Truthwitch series by Suzanne Dennard. This is another epic fantasy, and we follow two best friends. We have Isolde and Safia. Safia is a Truthwitch, which means that she can tell if someone's telling the truth or lying, and Isolde is a Threadwitch, so she can like see the connections between people. And Safia is really desired for her Truthwitch ability, and people are after her, and she strikes a bargain with a Wind Witch who is Prince Merrick, and he's kind of like a captain as well, but she's on the run, and Isolde and herself get separated at some point. There are some amazing romances, especially in book 1, so I do recommend the series, especially if you like a romance. The romance kind of peters off later on in the series, but if you like fantasy and if you like a little bit of romance, maybe try this one out. The next one I have to recommend is the Shadow and Bone series by Leigh Bardugo. This is multiple series, I guess you can say. The first series is the Shadow and Bone trilogy. Follow Lena, and she is a map maker, and she works for the military. And in this world, there's this big expanse of darkness that is cutting the country in two. The country is named Ravka, and she has to cross the fold, this big expanse of darkness, and people do not make it out alive. A lot of people die in the crossing, but she has to cross because she needs to go to the other side with her regiment or whatever. And so while she's crossing, her skiff gets attacked, and through that attack, a power emerges from herself because she's experiencing fear, and I guess that's what happens. So she learns she is the sun summoner. She learns that she has sun ability or light abilities, and she's taken to the little palace to be trained. And the Darkling there, he has the dark powers, and so they kind of feed off each other a little bit. And this is basically her origin story. It's about her coming into her own, and it's really great. There's a love triangle in here. There's some traveling in here. There's some running away. But it's mostly about her kind of getting to know the world and learning about her power and learning about the Grisha. And there's other people with other magical abilities, or there's people who can manipulate water or air, that can make things. There are people who can heal bodies or hurt bodies, and so it's a really good series. I really love it. The other series within the series is the Six of Crows duology. That is a heist story, so if you want a band of misfits who work together in order to complete a heist, that's amazing duology as well. And then the third one is kind of a sequel of both of the two series. So I definitely recommend reading at least the first two series first, but the last series is Nikolai's duology, basically the sequel of all that. So I definitely recommend the series if you want another fantasy. The next one is the Remnant Chronicles by Mary E. Pearson. This is one of my favorite fantasies of all time. Book 1 is The Kiss of Deception. In this one we follow Princess Leah, and she is to marry the prince of another neighboring kingdom to make an alliance between the two countries, and she is really unhappy about this. She does not want to marry someone she doesn't know. She assumes it's this old geezer who, someone a lot older than her, and it just makes her really uncomfortable. So she decides to run away with her maid, and they decide to start a new life in a small town. In hiding, and so she runs away, but while she's running away, there are two people chasing her. There's the prince that she left at the altar, and the other one is an assassin to kill her, and you don't know who is who, and it's an amazing mystery. You have no idea, but it's very romantic at the same time, and so I really love this series so much. The mystery element is only half of the story, and then the other half is a lot of traveling and running away and things like that. This is a really good, solid series. I gave every book either 5 stars or nearly 5 stars. So if you like a good fantasy trilogy with a strong female character, I definitely recommend it. The next series is technically not fantasy, but I don't read a lot of sci-fi, so I just decided to include it here, and it reads more like a space opera, so in my mind that's kind of fantastical. But it's the Cinder series, or the Lunar Chronicles by Marissa Meyer. This is fairy tale retellings but set in space, and book 1 is Cinder, and we follow Cinder, who is a cyborg, and she's the Cinderella character. So she does have an evil mother and stepsisters, and since she's a cyborg, she's kind of looked down upon, and she meets the prince, of course, but she gets kind of swept up in the politics of everything. There's an evil queen from the moon world or something like that, and this series is just a lot of fun. Cinder ends up going on the run, and she makes friends along the way, and each installment is a different fairy tale. So book 2 is Little Red Riding Hood, book 3 is Rapunzel, and book 4 is Snow White retelling. So it's really good epic fantasy. It's a good epic sci-fi or space opera, and if you like romance, if you like YA fantasy, you'll probably like this one as well. The next fantasy I want to recommend is Hunted by Meagan Spooner. This is a standalone, so if you don't want to read like a huge series, then I definitely recommend this one. This is Beauty and Beast retelling, and I really enjoyed this one because our female character, she's a hunter, and I just love reading about female huntresses. It's just, I don't know why I love it, but I do. But she hunts because her family is on hard times and they can't afford food or anything. So she goes out hunting, and one day her father, who's also a hunter, he goes missing. And so she decides to track down the beast that he was hunting. And it's a Beauty and Beast retelling, so you can probably guess who the beast is. And what I liked about this one too is the beast is like actually a wolf, which I thought it was interesting, and he walks on all fours and everything. But yeah, it's their story. I remember really enjoying it, so I recommend it. The next series or book I'm gonna recommend is the Red Queen series by Victoria Aveyard. I only read book 1 in this series, but I did really like it a lot, so I do recommend it. And people have like a love-hate relationship with it, but I can see why people like it, and I did really enjoy book 1. In this world, people are divided based on the color of their blood. So if you're red blood, you're a commoner, and if you're silver blood, you are the elite and you have special magical abilities. We follow Meyer, and she's red-blooded, but she gets taken to the palace for some reason, and she discovers that she has magical abilities as well, and she gets swept up into the politics of everything, because that's always happens in YA fantasy. But she gets to know the prince there, and things happen, and I just remember really enjoying it. It's been a long time since I read it, but there were some good twists at the end, and I can see this being a really good fun fantasy series. And lastly, I have the Graceling series by Kristin Cashore. I read the entire trilogy. There's a new book out, which I probably won't get to, but I read the first 3 books and really, really enjoyed them. They're all basically standalones. First one, we follow Katsa, and a Graceling is someone who has like an extreme gift in a certain area, and like people have different gifts. It just depends on what you're gifted, I guess. But her grace is that she can kill anyone in any way possible, which is really strange, but she can. And so since she has this ability, the king uses her for his own purposes, and so she works for the king. In comes Prince Poe, and he has a different grace, but it really matches Katsa's abilities, so they get to know each other. It's kind of their love story. They go on a quest. There is an enemy to the court, and this enemy is like really creepy. I just remember that he was super creepy, and he comes up throughout the entire trilogy. I remember just always being creeped out by him, and you learn more about him in book 3, which is Bitter Blue. Book 2 was my favorite, which is Fire, and it's kind of in a different part of the world, and you follow monsters, and your female character is a monster, but they're like rare. It was kind of interesting series. Each one, like I said, is basically a standalone, so you don't have to really read them in order. But I just remember really enjoying this trilogy. So those are my YA fantasy recommendations. I hope you find some gems in here for you to try out. If you have any other YA fantasy recommendations, please leave them down below so I can check them out and others can see. If you've read any of these books before, please comment down below. I'd love to know your thoughts and opinions about them. Do you like them? Do you not like them? I'd love to have a conversation with you. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe. If you have not done so, you can follow me on Goodreads and Instagram. And you know what? I want you to keep reading. Bye.